Ogunwale is a Nigerian author and politician who is passionate about seeing a new dawn in Nigerian politics. Now, he focuses strongly on the ability of the youth to make a change, and this morning we'll be talking to him about some of these things that he's so passionate about, and of course his book, Stepping Out, A Rookie's Guide to Nigeria's Politics by Bisi Ogunwale. You need to pick up a copy of this book, but let's just go through this over the next few minutes. Now, you are someone who, I mean, you've been in financial services and banking for about 10 years, and suddenly you just caught this bug and decided that, you know what, I'm going to target leadership. Let's just give us a background a little bit on how that started.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'd like to start by saying it wasn't just a bug that I caught.
Yeah.
While a student in the University of Ilorin, I was involved in the student politics of the school. In 2001, I contested for office in the school to be on the Student Representative Council of the Student Union Government, even though I didn't win the election at the time. But later on that year, I was elected as the national president of the Student Physiological Association of Nigeria. So, I mean, that gave me the opportunity, being the national president of the Student Association for my own department, going around the entire country in all the federal universities where, you know, the course was being offered at the time. Yeah. I was also a candidate to run in the National Association of Nigerian Students election that happened sometime in 2002. But after a while, I left politics, student politics, involvement in politics, and I just basically focused on my career, building a career in the financial services, and that was what I did up until when I decided to run. But I've always been a member of different political parties up until that time. I mean, from the time of AD, AC, ACN, and then eventually we evolved into APC.
APC. Now, let's talk about, I mean, talking about the book itself, and, you know, you've set a background about, you know, your political past, you know, with the student unions and all of that. Even I did a little bit of politics myself in Unilag. But let's go home now. At the beginning of the book, in fact, in how it all started, you know, you talk about how you were mothered by a rare mom, which is sort of like also what gives you a solid foundation when you're going out there. How important is that for the youths in Nigeria?
It is important that we all look back at the way the family system is built. I had a very rare privilege, like you said, to be raised by my grandmother. My mother at the time would drop me with my grandma, and then she would go on to school to go and acquire additional education. But my grandmother did a fine, fantastic job raising me, even though the last child she raised was maybe like 15 or thereabout. I mean, sorry, 25 years before my own time. But I watched her through the entire time that I was with her. She was a market leader. She was selling yam flour, which Yoruba people call elubo, at one of the big markets in Ofa, Owode market. So she was one of the market leaders there. And then also she was a community leader for the women in my village. So I watched the way she carried herself. She goes about with, you know, driving every course that she was involved in. She taught us a whole lot of value, discipline, and the reason why we should, you know, dedicate our lives to serving people. So that, for me, is really very important. But what we see now, and again, you really can blame so many of the parents nowadays. I mean, I'm one too. Economic development has really hampered the way we have time to attend to.
People have to go out and
you know,
early, so you don't have time
to find a way to help a living for yourself. So that time has sort of reduced in the time you have to take care of your children and all of that. So
that's pretty tough. So let's talk about the main journey itself. You know, once you decided that, okay, talk about the point at which you then decided, after 10 years in the financial sector, okay, I'm going to do this and go as a young person. And then what were the things that you encountered as you went into politics?
I think, for once, I really honestly at the time didn't think I was a young person. And at that time, I think I was too old to be running for office. Let's be honest with ourselves. But fundamentally, that's what the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says when we can get involved in the process. I remember I would call my wife and say that I have once told you before when we were still cutting to say that I will do politics. So I think it's about time I went in there. It took me a bit of time trying to, you know, convincing my wife and all of that. And my father-in-law would call me and said, okay, so your wife said you wanted to join a political process. Would you please come to the house and let's have a,
let's have a discussion about
let's have a conversation about what you're trying to do. So I went over to see him and he was like, can you remember so-so person? I said, yes. Do you remember what happened to him? I said, yes. In that same quarrel of yours where you want to, you know, my nephew was killed, you know, during one of the political rallies and all of that. He wanted to be involved in politics just like you. So, I mean, are you not afraid and all of that?
That's one of the things that I wanted to talk about, you know, the fact that once young people think about running, and you also are part of this movement, you know, not too young to run. But once young people are thinking about running, the first thing that comes to mind is the violence and the murkiness of Nigerian politics and the fear that, look, if I go into this, something might happen to me. So how did you overcome that fear? And, you know, as we round off, you know, talk to us about the Not Too Young to Run movement.
Okay, so for me, it's important that we always ask ourselves this question. What we let fear hold us down? So, I mean, I decided this is what I want to do. And then whatever comes out of it. I remember I was telling my uncle that he was like, are you not afraid that you will die? And you would read in the book that I said to him that if this is where I'm going to die, then so be it. But this is what I'm going to do. So
it took that decision for you to then decide that, you know what, I'm just going to do this no matter what happens.
As a young boy, I used to ask my late dad that you guys complain too much about what is going on in the nation, and I haven't seen you do anything about it. I don't want my son to ask me that same question. So, I mean, if my boy would ask me 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, what did you do? I want to be able to say this is what I did and this is what I think came out of what I did. And those for me were some of the reasons why I said, okay, so the violence, the illegalism, anything can happen, and then that's
Thank you so much, Bisi Ogunwale. Now, the book is Stepping Out, A Rookie's Guide to Nigeria's Politics. Very, very important for young people. If you're a young person, you need to get this book. And also follow Bisi at Bisi Ogunwale on all social media platforms. Find out what he's doing and how he's responding to all the country, and be a part of the process. And you're never too young to run. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, when you talk about the Constitution, whatever the Constitution allows.
I mean, it's good now that there's a process of constitutional amendment that is going on for
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Bisi.